Some of the trends that we are seeing are about increasing use of autonomy, increasing use of uncrewed systems, and I think that trend will continue. But it's going to be modulated by the type of conflict, the physical environment, those type of things. And I think when we're thinking about large-scale combat operations in our future, we need to think beyond the land domain. And the reason for that is because that's the way the threats are going to manifest, and that's what government and the Australian people expect of our forces, that we contribute across multiple domains. In particular, the land domain will be able to contribute to denying freedom of action to adversary maritime forces through the new long-range strike capabilities that we're receiving.
Yeah, some of the challenges in the near future are access to the global commons. So does every nation have a right to commerce and the traffic through what has traditionally and historically been access to the global commons? Are all the straits available for freedom of maritime movement? I think if any nation then tries to influence another nation's economy by shutting down what was traditionally access to the global commons, then it induces friction in the system, and that friction needs to be addressed. Hopefully, deterrence, is the most powerful form of preventing that influence. But if not, I think we all as nations that want access to freedom of movement in the maritime domain need to be very concerned about those access points and what's happening.
As a staff, we've continued to work on three big things that help us to think about the region differently and how we might be able to sustain ourselves or survive in the event of a crisis or a conflict. And that's our posture in the region, that's our protection in the region, and then the way that we sustain ourselves in the region. One of the things that was highlighted most recently to us in Talisman Sabre is the fact that it's a long way to Australia from Joint Base Lewis McChord. And there's no, oh, I forgot that thing, I need to go back and get it. But if you even think about something as small as us being able to take Australian M1 parts and put them on a US tank, or the fact that we were able to in place causeways to bring supplies to shore during the exercise. These are all things that we understand now, and they help to improve our posture in the region. We almost achieve posture of our own by tying into partners like Australia. They've got posture that we don't have in that region because they're there and they're our ally. And so the more that we can find out before we absolutely have to do something, how the other nations sit, how are they manned, how are they trained, how are they equipping themselves, how do they fight, how do they fight alongside us? The more of those things that we can figure out in training or rehearsals as we campaign through the Pacific, the better we're going to be served in the future.
We prepare for a range of possible conflict scenarios. And the question of balance, like how well to be prepared for one, where to invest, that's a strategy decision. And Army and the ADF, we don't do strategy. That's what government does. And the government's current strategy is to deter conflict by building an integrated force that would cause our adversaries doubt before they proceed with operations that are against our interests in our region. Will that strategy change? Of course, because strategy is by definition adversarial, and as it shifts, we're going to need to shift. That's where we come back to that adaptive mindset. What a unit did 10 years ago is interesting, but it's not as important as what it needs to be right now or in 5 years' time. One of the discussions we often have is about the transition from competition through crisis into conflict. and what we're doing to get ready for that. We're not in a conflict setting yet. And if that eventuates, that transition, as they always are, will be very hard. The way that we're seeking to mitigate that risk is through mobilisation planning. So our planning is asking questions like, what would it take to create a third Army division in 2 years? What would that mean for our organisation? What types of forces would we create? What are some of the opportunities in technology? What are the types of technologies in Australia that we might be able to accelerate quickly?
There's a lot of involvement we do with NATO, but we also want to align ourselves with First Corps, collaborating with 1st Australian Division, and creating that synergy and how we understand their capability with what we can bring to the fight, but also how they can assist us in joining the fight.
Multinational warfighting is incredibly important. That is how we'll fight in the future. We will never fight alone. The challenge is going to be commanding and controlling multinational warfighting operations in the Indo-Pacific. One of the reasons that we do activities like exercise Yamasakura in Japan with the divisional headquarters and exercise Freedom Shield on the Korean Peninsula is so that we can train with our closest partners and test that interoperability. Our procedural interoperability is improving through battle rhythm events, and the real challenge, I think, lies with our technical or systems interoperability. So we need to be better at integrating systems, but also with sharing information. One of the things that I'm really pushing across the division is we need to be prepared to fight tonight, fight with what we have. So we don't make up capabilities. In our exercises, in our training, if we're doing a command post exercise, we fight with what we have, so we're ready to fight tonight.